Immediately declared a national emergency at the border. He will be sending the military to guard it. He said he would end government programmes promoting diversity, equity and inclusion. And yet again, we had that expansionist rhetoric. He said he would rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, and he's promised to seize back the Panama Canal. So with a reminder of all the live events today, we'll leave you with this.
We want to have our borders closed, and we want to know that we're safe.
We got to make America great again.
The Honorable Donald John Trump.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
The golden age of America begins right now.
We got our country back.
We will drill, baby, drill. I was saved by God to make America great again.
Hello there, let's take a brief look now at the world weather forecast for the next day or so. Now we'll begin in North America, where there have been brisk Santa Ana winds blowing again. The winds continue through Tuesday, the humidity levels are low and the fire risk remains at critical or extreme for some parts still of southwestern California. The heat remains here, but elsewhere cold plunge of air has been sinking southwards from Canada. Record-breaking snowfall perhaps across parts of the Gulf Coast, including 4 to 6 inches of snow in the forecast for New Orleans. Meanwhile, this cold front will be reinvigorating some heavy rain across parts of the Caribbean as we head through the middle of the week, sinking southwards to southern Mexico and Guatemala. And that heavy rain across Brazil has been transferring a little further westwards. So some heavy downpours of rain for parts of western Brazil, southern Peru. The heat continues for northern Argentina, Uruguay and Paraguay as we head through Tuesday and Wednesday. Into Europe now, this is Storm Garowe, which was named by the Portuguese Met Service. Strong winds and some heavy downpours of rain, some thunderstorms for western coastal areas of Iberia there. Meanwhile, this is Storm Gabri, named by the Italian Met Service. Some heavy showers still across many parts of Italy, tracking further eastwards. There'll also be some showers from this storm across northern Africa too, into Algeria, Tunisia and for northern parts of Egypt. Further south, there'll be some heavy rain still for parts of Madagascar, into Mozambique, Malawi and Zambia. Let's take a look at the Middle East. Now there'll be some showers tracking eastwards across the Levant as we head through the middle of the week. Further south for many parts of the Arabian Peninsula it remains dry. Some wintry showers for Afghanistan in particular. But for much of India, it does remain now largely dry. We've seen some heavy rain in the south, but a lot drier on Wednesday. Some areas of cloud. There could still be some heavy downpours across parts of Sri Lanka. The heat continues in the north. Meanwhile, we've seen a lot of wintry weather across many parts of Japan, but temperatures now here largely above the seasonal average, and the heat remains in China. In fact, temperatures are well above the seasonal average across southeastern areas of China. The usual rain continues further south for the Malay Peninsula, Indonesia and into the Philippines. Meanwhile, tropical cyclone Sean clearing away from Australia. The heat continues for Western Australia. We'll see this area of rain clear away from New South Wales and Victoria. Some rain gradually pushing northwards across the South Islands of New Zealand. Bye-bye.
There's only a limited amount of resources available to try and protect places, and the more new species we can find, the greater the justification to try and protect places like Marbu.
I'm not going to be a power astronaut, I want to be an astronaut, and I happen to have a physical disability, and this is the message that we are trying to deliver.
Scientists estimate human-caused climate change made the recent drought in Somalia 100 times more likely.
Angelina barely remembers it here. Before the invasion, there was COVID. That's years of playing alone.
Beautiful. This is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. This might be the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Inspiring short films from the BBC.
Live from London, this is BBC News. Donald Trump signs a series of sweeping executive orders as he begins his second US presidency. One of President Trump's first actions has been to pardon more than 1,500 of his supporters who stormed the US Capitol 4 years ago when they tried to overturn his election defeat. President Trump's first full day in office. We've got the latest. Hello, and North America editor there, Sarah Smith.
His declaration of martial.
The third and final inaugural night there. Stay with us here as we look at the economic implications of President Trump and his next term in office. I'll be back shortly.
Hello there. Let's take a brief look now at the weather forecast for Europe as we head through the next few days. Now, we'll begin with the pressure chart. Now, you can see out towards the western coast of Iberia, there's a deep area of low pressure. This is Storm Garraway, named by the Portuguese Met Service. Strong winds, heavy rain, and some very large waves to be expected across western parts of Portugal in particular. That's all pushing further northwards and eastwards. Meanwhile, this is Storm Gabri, named by the Italian Met Service. Some more showers across Italy, pushing eastwards towards Greece and the Balkans. That's where the bulk of the wet weather will be, eventually pushing further southwards and eastwards across to Turkey and Cyprus. But on Tuesday, some very wet weather across the Extremadura region of Spain. There'll also be 10-metre waves, perhaps across western coastal areas of Portugal, 11 metres in Madeira. Further north and east, across many parts of Central and Eastern Europe, high pressure remains, so it's generally dry. The winds are light and there will be some issues with mist and fog, with temperatures climbing for many as we head through the next few days. You can see all of that wet weather gradually pushing further northwards and eastwards. Then 9 degrees Celsius in Paris, 15 in Bordeaux on Wednesday. Temperatures will be rising. And you can notice that in our city outlooks too. So in Dublin, we'll be looking at 10 degrees by the time we get to Friday. Temperatures remaining at around 16-17 degrees in Lisbon. Some wet weather at times. Temperatures also rising further east. Bye.
You want to talk business? Meet me in the On-Board Lounge.
In nearly 20 years of being a journalist, I think one thing I can say which is true of this region is that it's become much harder to be a journalist.
There's barely any journalism in here holding the government to account.
It's really important to be on the ground, and if that means you've got to go to hostile, remote places, then we have to do that.
That's the opium resin. There's a very pungent smell of it in the air right now.
The Delta wave of COVID devastated India, and I think it was the coverage that we did for the BBC at the time which brought international attention.
What's happening here could affect the world's ability to recover from the pandemic.
When I'm reporting from a region or a country where women's rights are being eroded, what we're most focused on is ensuring that there is a spotlight on that story.
Should women be educated or not?
We've met with families who've had to do the unthinkable.
Another person came up and asked if we'd like to buy their child. The desperation is hard to put in words.
It's really important that we tell the story in a sensitive way and maintain the dignity of the people who are talking to us. Many of the stories we've had to tell are distressing, they're difficult, but that's usually an indicator that they're really important stories to tell.
After 15 months of war and massive death and trauma on both sides, Israel and Hamas have reached a ceasefire deal to release the hostages and allow displaced Gazans to return home. Will it hold? And can Israelis and Palestinians recover and rebuild? Stay with us here on BBC News.
Now on BBC News, the latest business news from across the globe. Business Today.
The White House announces a national energy emergency as President Trump launches a package of pro-fossil fuels policies and vows to leave the Paris Climate Agreement. The US could impose tariffs of 25% on Mexican and Canadian imports from February the 1st, Donald Trump says, as he signed a raft of executive orders. And markets are on the move as investors keep across Trumponomics 2.0. Wall Street's expected to open lower after the president's tariff threat against America's two biggest trading partners. If you've just joined us, you're in time for Business Today with me, Sally Bundock, and our focus is firmly on the world's biggest economy. Donald Trump has
power to execute some of this major compute.
Mike Mainvich, fascinating to get your take on the AI ambitions of this new administration in the White House. You are with BBC News. We've got a live page keeping you up to date on all events going on in Washington at the moment. The headline, the most controversial of executive orders, a pardoning of 1,600 Capitol riot defendants.
This is the game changer seat. Look, it even comes with binoculars.
Hello there. Significant weather continues to dominate the headlines across North America at the moment. The cold Arctic plunge has sunk its way far south. It's going to be impacting Houston, Louisiana, New Orleans, bringing some significant snow, quite unusual for them. Behind it, strong Santa Ana winds, an issue once again across California, and strong winds with significant wind chill across the plains as that cold air sits in place. Into South America, some heavy rain at the moment through Bolivia and into central and southern portions of Brazil. Not quite as hot as it has been in Paraguay and northern Argentina. Seen some stormy weather across the west coast of Portugal. That's moving further inland. Some rain across northern France as well. Still some showers across the Alps and into northern Italy, and drier elsewhere with fog an issue. Across to North Africa, we've got a few scattered showers impacting parts of Morocco over the next few days. Some heavy rain into Zambia and Zimbabwe as well. We've got the potential for some rain pushing into the Levant as that storm eases its way through the eastern Mediterranean. Quite a story across much of the Middle East through the middle part of the week. Some sharp showers into Sri Lanka set to continue. A little bit of cloud as well into Tamil Nadu, but here it should stay dry. Elsewhere, it's largely fine and quiet, with a few showers in New Delhi helping to lift the fog. Now, across China, we've got a good deal of high pressure, keeping things fine and dry and temperatures above where they should be for this time of year. Sharper showers, particularly through Malaysia and into Indonesia. We've had some heat easing a touch into Western Australia, but some of that extreme heat pushing its way further east over the next few days. Heavy rain eases from the North Island of New Zealand, but more wet weather to come. That's it. Take care.
Hello, I'm Katya Adler, host of The Global Story, a podcast bringing you fresh perspectives on one big news story each weekday. Along with a BBC colleague, I take you on a journey about what's happening, why, and what it all means. The Global Story. Listen wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
Governments come and go. The Georgian population's will has been unchanged over 30 years of independence.
I define populism as exploiting a grievance rather than solving it, as riding the anger rather than providing the answer.
Couldn't sleep at night. You'd go in the studio and you'd just create music, put something down if you had an idea.
When you iconize people and you make them represent a cause, that is the worst thing that you can do for the cause.
I think every athlete goes through their end of their career in a very different way.
When big names talk, they talk to us.
Live from London, this is BBC News. Donald Trump, national emergency, and in office, we've got the latest. Emergency on the US-Mexico. In office, we've got the latest.
Complete his promises.
Happen with these tariffs. I mean, one thing I should add, if we have time, is that if you look at China's version of Twitter, Weibo, X I should say, the top trending topic on there, one of the top trending topics, is the US pulling out of the Paris climate deal. Now, if the US steps away from climate, of course, it enables China to take the high moral ground to say we're the leader in terms of amelioration of climate, and so you might expect that.
OK. Steve McDonald for now. Thank you very much indeed. We've got Business Today here next on BBC News. Let's take you live to Washington, where it's nearly 1:30 in the morning and the celebrations are still underway. A closed event, the final ball, the Starlight Ball, is currently happening. I'll be back with the top economic news next.
Hello there. Let's take a brief look now at the weather forecast for Europe as we head through the next few days. Now we'll begin with the pressure chart. Now you can see out towards the western coast of Iberia, there's a deep area of low pressure. This is Storm Garaway, named by the Portuguese Met Service. Strong winds, heavy rain and some very large waves to be expected across western parts of Portugal in particular. That's all pushing further northwards and eastwards. Meanwhile, this is Storm Gabri, named by the Italian Met Service. Some more showers across Italy, pushing eastwards towards Greece and the Balkans. That's where the bulk of the wet weather will be, eventually pushing further southwards and eastwards across to Turkey and Cyprus. But on Tuesday, some very wet weather across the Extremadura region of Spain. There'll also be 10-metre waves, perhaps across western coastal areas of Portugal, 11 metres in Madeira. Further north and east across many parts of Central and Eastern Europe, high pressure remains, so it's generally dry. The winds are light and there will be some issues with mist and fog, with temperatures climbing for many as we head through the next few days. You can see all of that wet weather gradually pushing further northwards and eastwards. Then 9 degrees Celsius in Paris, 15 in Bordeaux on Wednesday. Temperatures will be rising. And you can notice that in our city outlooks too. So in Dublin, we'll be looking at 10 degrees by the time we get to Friday. Temperatures remaining at around 16-17 degrees in Lisbon. Some wet weather at times. Temperatures also rising further east. Bye.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380.
The sun rises over Khiva, an ancient city in Uzbekistan, where beautiful legends thrive in the hustle of busy modern life. where tradition and crafts bring joy, connecting generations. Drift through the city as it shares the secrets of the old Silk Road. See faces shining with smiles. Welcome to Hiva, tourist capital of the Islamic world. Hiva, Uzbekistan. Explore the treasure.
After 15 months of war and massive death and trauma on both sides, Israel and Hamas have reached a ceasefire deal to release the hostages and allow displaced Gazans to return home. Will it hold, and can Israelis and Palestinians recover and rebuild? Stay with us here on BBC News.
Now on BBC News, the latest business news from across the globe. Business Today.
The White House announces a national energy emergency as President Trump launches a package of pro-fossil fuels policies and vows to leave the Paris Climate Agreement. The US could impose tariffs of 25% on Mexican and Canadian imports from February the 1st, Donald Trump said as he signed a raft of other executive orders. And markets are on the move as investors keep across executive orders with wide. Get down to business on trading partners.